everything I shoot, I eat. And quite honestly, I this is very organic. None of my deer have antibiotics. They're completely living off the land. My fish are coming straight out of the water. They're not farm raised. And you want to talk about some real, bad stuff? Look at farm raised fish.
Mm.
You could almost make an argument that it's a little inhumane for these things, right? But like, and it brings camaraderie, it brings relationship. I've had conversions of people when I'm out hunting with them. I'm close to God's creation, and I will tell anybody that argues with if you I think that every person in the world, it doesn't necessarily have to be a deer, but should have to slaughter an animal. And the reason I say that is not because I'm all deranged. It's because when the first time you do that, the first time I shot a deer and I got up to it, and I do this with all of my animals, whatever I shoot, I go up, and the first thing I do is I say, God, thank you. Thank you for this creation. Thank you for providing it. And I promise to respect it and to love it and to never abuse it. But when you butcher an animal, when you shoot an animal and butcher it, you understand very clearly that there is a difference, a major difference between humanity and the rest of creation. And I think that that is very, very needed right now, because I'm sure a lot of the people that are saying, the PETA types, and we got to protect all these animals and throwing, blood on people wearing fur coats, are the same people that are rejoicing in Charlie Kirk's death.
Stop laughing at me, Lambert. I was just complaining that it hadn't done our intro. Well, it has. So there we are. Hello and welcome to Catholic Unscripted. I'm Catherine Bennett.
And I'm Mark Lambert.
And I'm Father Joshua Waltz.
Yes, yeah, great. Father Joshua Waltz is back with us for a conversation which we had booked in anyway, Father, to catch up with you, see how you are and what you're doing. And by popular demand, really, people loved the last time you joined us and loved the conversation we had. But we hadn't known at the time the news that Charlie Kirk had been assassinated. So it just so happens that we're speaking to a lot of people that side of the pond this week. And we're beginning by asking for your comments on that, because there was talk of him possibly coming into the Catholic Church, wasn't there?
Yeah, I mean, the guy is just a staunch defender of democracy. He's a staunch defender of truth. He's a staunch defender of Christianity. There's been so much going on lately. I mean, this last week, you have we're remembering September 11th, that happened 24 years ago. We're remembering the shootings in Minneapolis. There was another shooting in Colorado. Charlie Kirk is assassinated. They just found this 13-year-old kid with a cache of guns it was like 23 guns. Like, you're just sitting there, it's all in 1 week and everything's hitting all at once, and you're just wondering, I'm like, Lord, what are you what are you trying to communicate to us? And I remember I was sitting when I saw the video, and I really wish I never would have seen the video. I was on a text thread, and it just popped up, and they said, "Hey, Charlie Kirk's been assassinated." I just hit play because I didn't even know where he was at. It was UNLV or UV UVU, and all of a sudden it's just like, it was like in 2 seconds, like boom, he just jolts backwards, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, like, what is happening? And I just, like, I love Charlie Kirk. Like, I watch him all the time. I just love how he debates. I love his ability to speak truth, and for the most part in love. He'll meet people where they're at, and then you always hear, like, somebody will be like, they'll bring up something, and Charlie will be like, "You really want to go here? Like, do you really want to go here?" Like, he's giving them a chance before he destroys them. And so he was always a fair man of debate. Like, and it was fun to watch, and he was full of information. And so I was really saddened by it. Obviously, I was really kind of messed up between the school shootings and this. And I remember I was just sitting in my chapel, and I'm just like, a parishioner texted me and said, "Why would God allow one of his greatest spokesmen on truth and democracy and Christianity to be killed?" and I was just, I was just overcome at this moment. I just right back. I don't know, like I just didn't know. I was still processing it. And then later that night, I was praying in my chapel, and I'm like, Lord, why would you allow this? And I just heard this inside, like, look up, and above my altar in my tabernacle is a crucifix, and it just, I mean, it just hit me, like, why would God allow His greatest spokesman and staunch defender of the truth to die? And I'm like, I texted her back and I said, that's not the right question. The right question is, why did God allow His own son to die? That's the real question, because Jesus is the only truly good human being, right? He's the only one that was guilty of nothing, and yet God allowed him to die. And the church is only given one answer for this, right? The reason why God allowed His son to die was to save us. And so, in some way, for thousands of years, that's been our answer. It always will be our answer. And so, in some way, I kind of think that this is a turning point for Americans, to either turn back to the gospel, or you're going to see this violence just increase and increase and increase and increase. And people are like, well, why does God why is the devil allowed to do this? I'm like, we're giving him power. Like, we have surrendered so much. I mean, if you just, and I'm not saying, like, good believing Catholics, I'm saying as humanity as a whole, if you take the porn industry, abortion, and drugs, like, those three are destroying humanity. And we've fully turned over our will and said, well, it's a person's right and blah blah blah. Like, you can't build a structure of sin and then say, why isn't God helping us? God's trying to help us, right? He's sending people like Charlie Kirk to speak the truth, and there's even been some talk, as you mentioned. This is a real roundabout way to get to your your question. You mentioned, there was talk about him coming into the faith, and I think I've seen enough videos at this point. I know he had a meeting set up with Bishop Barron. I know he was working with Michael Knowles from Daily Wire, talking about the fathers of the church. He was really interested in the fathers of the church. He really uh, talks about Mary, and how he's like, we need to revere the Blessed Virgin Mary. Like, and he's a staunch Protestant, and Erica, his wife, is very Catholic. And there was talk about him coming into the church, and this Monsignor, I can't remember what his name was, but he posted that their marriage was blessed in the church, and that Charlie was very close to converting to the Catholic faith. And that doesn't surprise me. Charlie is a man of truth. He digs deep into whatever he's studying, because he wants to find what the truth is, and as he finds it, his opinions and stuff will change. And I think that happened to him in Christianity. But regardless, a truly honorable man. Is a very sad day in America.
Obviously, as a catechumen, or there's a path to sainthood there, even, isn't there?
Yeah, well, I mean, maybe I'm getting a little bit more liberal in my older age, but yeah, I mean, the guy, if he is in the process of becoming Catholic, he obviously, I mean, he was given death threats all the time, and part of that was his entire teaching was based on the scriptures. There's no getting around that. I mean, people would challenge him and say, well, like, Jesus said this. He's like, where does it say that? Because you're putting words into Jesus's mouth. Or, we're against the death penalty, or why does the nation get involved, or why does the faith get involved in the nations? And he's like, I can show you 10 places where the faith is involved in the nations. Look at the whole Old Testament. Ruth, on behalf of the nations. You have Esther, right, praying on behalf of the nations. You have Moses. My gosh, like, you want to talk about political and the culture coming together within the nation? It's all over the place. So he would constantly use the scriptures to back up whatever he was. It was either the scriptures or the Constitution. Those were like and he didn't have it. He was proudly not against, but proud that he didn't have a college education, right? And he's outsmarting all of these collegiate people that are supposed to be so enlightened, and so they don't know anything. That was like his point. College is a waste of time at this point because of the wokeness of it.
That is incredible, isn't it? Catherine and I were talking about that earlier on. Actually, she's due to appear at a conference on education. She's been asked to go and give a talk, and we were, this is one of the big things that we feel is infecting our universities is this ideology that means that all the normal, rational, logical ways of thinking have been thrown out the window, and now we've got it's almost self-defeating what goes on in university.
Well,
And
and,
this is
and the
the
thing,
evidence of that, isn't it?
oh, for sure. And then the thing that's just such garbage about the whole thing is it's like they do all this in the name of tolerance, right? We need more tolerance. But then when you get a guy like Charlie Kirk comes on your campus, free speech, he's just debating people. You don't even have to come, right? Nobody has to show up. But they all show up, and then there's no tolerance at all. Like he's just supposed to sit back and listen to the garbage that they're saying and not come back with anything. And if he does, with his point of view, based on the Constitution, based on the Holy Scriptures, that somehow that's not tolerant, that's fascist, that's whatever. Like it's incredible to me about they preach this doctrine of tolerance, but it's only tolerance of what they believe. When anybody else speaks, it's like, shut up, like you don't get to talk. You're like, whoa, like
But
what happened to tolerance, you know?
this is what Benedict XVI warned us about with the
Yep.
dictatorship of relativism, isn't it? This is, I mean,
Absolutely.
I can't believe how clearly it's come true now.
Right, and it's so what's in, and this is like the darkening of the intellect, right? Like you can sin darkens the intellect, and it doesn't allow it to see truth. And the other thing that you can clearly see is, that when the enemy when he's in his machinations, right? You can see like what people really believe. Like the knee-jerk reactions of people in this country has been so disheartening. In one aspect. In another aspect, it's incredible. Like all the believers and everybody is pulling together and like we're praying for it. We have in Bismarck, North Dakota, we had a business owner celebrating the death of Charlie Kirk. And like, I'm like, okay, that's awful. Anyway, like, look, I don't like Nancy Pelosi. In fact, I really despise Nancy Pelosi. I would never, if she was assassinated, I would never say, wow, what a great day. I would be like, this is a terrible tragedy. I disagree with her. She's entitled to her opinion. I'm entitled to my opinion, and we should be working towards the truth. But I would never, ever wish death by assassination, any type of murder on anybody. And to see these, a certain group of people celebrating this it's, man, like you can feel the darkness around that. You can feel the enemy's presence around that.
Yeah.
Well, and that is sort of fascism, isn't it? Shutting down.
Right.
Like
That's
that,
the irony of all
the
that.
irony of it is just ridiculous, isn't it?
Yeah.
My wife has just come in from work, and she said, she came in and she said, like, really, everyone's feeling it, aren't they, emotionally? And she said she couldn't believe, like, all the posts on her social media were, Charlie Kirk, Charlie Kirk, Charlie Kirk. And she said the amount of people celebrating his demise, was viscerally hurting her.
Right.
And it's a really dark turn for our society and our culture. And you can draw that line through our universities and the work that he was doing, winning arguments, changing hearts and minds, and willing to stand there and have a debate. And exactly as you say, the only answer has been to shut down that debate, hasn't it? Instead of
right. Well, and
that's
one of the lines I love, I didn't realize how, like, I really appreciate Candace Owens as well. I think she speaks a lot of truth, but I didn't realize how close they were. They were like brother and sister. Like they built Turning Point from the ground up, from hundreds of people to millions of people. And she was speaking, she said, he said, they might have more money than us, and they might have right now more influence than us, but they will never outwork us. And and I think that I really took away from that. Like I think it was St. Augustine, right? He says, pray like everything depends on God, work like everything depends on you. And I love that line. And I think, Charlie and Candace, like, I mean, the amount of backlash that they received for stuff that they did that just wasn't true. I mean, people just making things up. But they just never stopped. He's like, I'll never stop working until the culture has changed. And I think that's a huge thing that we as Christians can take away. like everybody's like, we don't have a lot of power, and like we feel like we're always on the defensive, and I'm like, well, how hard are you working to get the word out, like to preach the charisma? Do you even know it? Like that would be a good starting point. Like learn it, fall in love with it, and then you can go out and you can start debating with people and not just feel like you're always the people. The reason why people feel like they're always on the defensive is because they don't know what they're talking about. Right. So if you come and say, well, Jesus says that the death penalty is wrong. Okay. And you're like, I don't read the scriptures, so I have no idea how to defend this. And you're like, I don't know. But if you know how to defend it, and people are like, well, there's so much. Okay, well, pick 5. Pick 5 things that you're passionate about, that you want to learn about, how scripture backs up what the church teaches, and then go out and engage in love, right? I mean, debate, don't back down, but debate. I think like if there's one thing that Charlie Kirk taught us is that you can change culture simply by talking.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Simply by talking. It doesn't have to be force.
Do you not think, though, that one of the problems, and this is one of the great things that's inspirational about talking to you every time we speak to you, Father, is that the church has lost confidence in those answers. If we don't need to know all the answers in a way, if we are confident that the church knows the answers.
Yeah, quite.
But the problem is our bishops and stuff have stopped. They've lost confidence. They've lost their faith. And so they're sort of mitigating with the secular ideologies, allowing them in. We've just had that at the Vatican, haven't we? That terrible thing with Father James Martin bringing
yeah, so I would like to speak to that, actually, because I would agree with you on some aspects. I mean, there are some bishops that have mitigated the faith and kind of falling lockstep with the culture. There's some really good ones too, and he did meet with James Martin, Pope Leo. He also met with what's his name? It's
Leo Cardinal Burke.
Cardinal Burke. So he met with Burke, and obviously talking about the TLM. So there's both sides of the aisle. The Pope wants to hear both sides. The stuff in the Vatican, from what I look, because when you hear it on social media, it's just like it's just pop. It's got to hit hard, and then people are like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe it happened!" Like, well, I went and looked at it a little bit, and like Leo didn't bless a group of gay people. They were present at the Wednesday audience, and he blessed the entire crowd that they were present at. They were not recognized. They were not like. And to equate that as saying Pope Leo is falling lockstep with the culture is insane. And that there was a mass celebrated in St. Peter's Basilica, in honor of the LGBTQ movement. Not true. Like it was celebrated at the Jesu, which is the Jesuit church, which James Martin is the Jesuit, which is just as horrific. Don't get me wrong, but don't try to take something out of context and then destroy our pontiff with it, because he has shared a few things that he holds in common with Francis. Like give the guy a chance. My goodness, So there are factions within the church for sure. And I mean, Jesus told us that was going to be that way. Judas was in the initial 12. So I think there are, I think there's becoming more and more, at least of priests. I think bishops are slowly getting on board too. Again, referencing back to Charlie Kirk, I mean, you want to talk about an influx of people returning to Christ. The younger generation is on fire right now, and I hate to throw out words like, but like the baby boomers, it's very flat. A lot of that it was kind of a pastoral project that completely failed. And young people want tradition. They want something that they can hang on to. They love the idea that it's old and it's been around forever. And there's, doctrines and dogmas and truths that they can hang on to, because there's just nothing to hang on to. The dictatorship of relativism has made everything just, like air. It's like in Ecclesiastes, like, vanity of vanities. There's no truth. And what do you hang on to? And if you don't have anything to hang on to, well, depression, anxiety, mental illness, all this stuff just slowly creeps in, because we were meant for something greater than ourselves. I mean, if it's just a self-focus, well, I mean, you're a dead man. If that makes sense.
Well, we actually just posted an article. I did a really deep dive onto that thing about Pope Leo meeting James Martin, and we posted it on the website, and it's got loads of traction. And basically, what I found out, I've got a few friends in Rome, and what I found out is that, and it makes lots of sense, you know, that the curial machine, if you like, has been built up by Pope Francis over 13 years or whatever. And you can't dismantle that overnight. And someone like James Martin, he knows how to navigate it, you know, because he's been going in there. So he knows who to speak to. And it's this guy, Monsignor Sapienza, who's in charge of communications, who books all the meetings for Pope Leo. So it's not like he even, you know, had much to do with the actual meeting. And as you say, he studiously avoided actually meeting with this group when they turned up. So, but at the same time, the communications team, you know, there is this lobbying. This is what worries me from like Supich, Tobin, McElroy. We know what side they're on, and we know that they're lobbying for these issues in the church. But in that article, I go into the doctrine in quite some detail. And this is the thing, Father, that always gets me. If you take that brick out, you know, it happened here in 1930 with the Anglican Church. They had a council at Lambeth where they basically said that contraception was acceptable within a marriage. And everything has fallen to bits from there. And we know why, because you can't divide the unitive and procreative ends of marriage and retain the doctrine that we've got, can you?
Right. Well, I mean, you can't, once you break the unitive and procreative, like anything is, I mean, I think that's what Paul VI probably knew. And that's why, you know, he said, I know what I have to write. I don't know how to write it. And, you know, there's a lot of speculative, whatever dialogue around the fact that, you know, Paul VI was actually in contact with Carol Wojtyła, and Carol Wojtyła basically wrote Humane Vitae. And then we see that because when John Paul II takes over, his commentary on Humane Vitae is theology of the body. So like, either he was studying it for years or he just penned it quickly because we needed something. But you can see very clearly if you take, whenever I teach on, I'm like, if you take contraception as a moral issue, all you got to think about is sex, no babies. Like, to keep it as simple as possible, sex, no babies. And then you look at every other moral issue once you break those apart. Yeah. So when you break apart, you know, sex and babies, every other moral issue falls from that. So the in vitro fertilization is what? Babies, no sex. The homosexual agenda is what? Sex, no babies. You take, any pornography, sex, no babies. They just fall. Euthanasia, right? You could even euthanasia you can get from that, because what does contraception say? I determine when life begins. Well, it's a very small step then to say if that's okay, I also determine when life ends. And you can just see it, you know, post 1968 onward, you can just see, or 1970, you can see the entire decline of morality. Abortion. Like, no, I think I'm pretty sure this is right. People can fact check it, but there's no society or culture, civilization that has fully accepted abortion without first accepting contraception in some form. Because if the whole thing is sex, no babies, contraception isn't 100% effective. So if you have a baby, what did you not want? A baby. So it's very easy and that's small step moral wise. And life, it has no dignity. You can see the dignity of life falling apart with each of these stages, right? And so, yeah, I think Paul VI knew well that was going to be the demise, and that's why we have to hold on that moral issue, because I think our entire sexual morality rises or falls on it, you know. And it's hard. I mean, I'm not married, but I've worked with enough married couples to know, like, even very staunchly Catholic people, it is a very difficult thing to practice. But nowhere does Jesus say do the easy thing, right? Like, he says take the narrow road, and the narrow road is difficult and few follow it. So I think if you're doing more difficult things, it's a pretty good indicator that you're probably on the right road.
Well, and we fall and we get things wrong and we make mistakes, and that's what the confessional's for, isn't it? But we get up and we keep trying, don't we? So
yeah, I love that. You know, St. Paul says, he says, those who persevere will be saved, right? He doesn't say those who are perfect, doesn't say those who get every doctrine correct, or, you know, live virtuous living absolutely 100%. Just those who persevere, those who don't give up, those who keep striving forward, right? Those are the ones that are saved.
Yeah, I think that example of uncoupling the unitive and the procreative is just the same with everything. We started with Charlie Kirk and the universities, and once you remove something from its original vision, and really this is removing God as head and putting man above God. Once you do that, then you're going to have that crumbling with everything. So education, for example, this idea that there's Catholic schools and there's non-Catholic schools and there's these schools and there's those schools. Education, all schools should be Catholic, as in all people should be trained and taught and educated and catechized under the aegis of the church. Once we had the schools and the hospitals, the hospices under the church as this service, they then moved away from the church and became a business. And so now we're seeing the product of young people who have been infected by agendas, because schools are not really places to teach truth. Even Catholic schools, they're not places to educate your child, to form your child to become what they're meant to be, what they're created to be. They are just places that you shove your kids into. Even Catholic schools, you do the sign of the cross, you've got a bit of holy water, there's Our Lady on the wall, and then bang, here we go with all the stuff in the culture. And so, and this is the secular agenda, the spirit of the age. And so, is it any wonder that we then have the radicalization of these people who, they're so deformed, they're so malformed, their consciences are so deeply corrupted that they can go on the internet and dance and sing and celebrate the death of the assassination of someone. It's so sick. It is so sick. I think we don't even know how sick that is. Even to be able to see a video like that and just sit and have a conversation about it. It's so desperately sick. It's disgusting. And this is because the church has capitulated on so much ground that we end up, like you say, you give a little bit, let's give contraception, but we'll keep marriage as sacred. What do you end up with? Same-sex marriage, so-called marriage.
Right. So you end up with neither, really.
No, you end up with nothing because you've given a little pinch of incense. Yeah, little bit. That's all you need to give. It's all gone.
Yeah, I don't know if I mentioned it last time I was on here, but I love it. And I can't find it, but I've heard it was attributed to whoever. It was probably Dostoevsky, but regardless of whoever said it, it's a hell of a quote. And he said, there are two ages of mankind, right? From the rise of man to the death of God, and from the death of God to the annihilation of man. And so as man is rising, and like you mentioned, you have all these hospitals and universities, and these are all founded in the name of Jesus Christ. They're all founded in the name of human dignity and human life and truth and goodness and beauty, and you can see it everywhere. And then as we continue to rise, and it becomes so potent and powerful, and all of a sudden it's making boatloads of money, and then all of a sudden you start to give here and give there and give here and give there, and you lose, so it's the rise of man until all of a sudden you're like, we don't need God anymore. And once you're at that point, then you start descending into the annihilation of mankind, because left to our own devices, good luck, man. We will kill each other. We will destroy each other. And you're beginning to see that, and it comes from the fact that, yes, I mean, the church is really dropping the ball. We have been for many years, and we need people to step up and start catechizing and start getting out there and start living the faith. Personally, I think that this is the age of martyrs. I think you're starting to see it. Like, I really believe that you could make the argument that in some way Charlie Kirk was a martyr. And I might get torn apart for that, but like, he's out there putting himself on the line for the truth of the gospel and the truth of Jesus Christ. And in part, that's why he was murdered. Right. And the more we do that, I think with this malformed culture, the more we're going to be attacked. And I read this, I think it was like 5 years ago or something. It blew me away. So in Rome, when the Christians were first being attacked, right? Especially under the persecutions of Nero and the burning of Rome, and Nero did it, and he was blaming the Christians, whatever. The sentence that they gave to the early Christians was not the burning of the city of Rome. The sentence was they were sentenced to death because of their hatred for humanity. And I'm like, what? Like, you want to talk about history repeating itself? Like, what does everybody say about the Catholic Church's doctrines on sexuality and all that? You hate us. you hate humanity, you know? And it wasn't. It was the early church was a love of humanity, that they were trying to get rid of paganism and the debauchery and the orgies and the vomitoriums and like all of this just pleasure, the god of pleasure, so as to bring virtue and truth and goodness and beauty into this world that was so chaotic and so corrupt. And that's what we're trying to do now. And we get labeled with the exact same thing. And so I don't think we're far. I really don't. I mean, I hate to say this, and unless there's a massive resurgence, which there might be. I don't think we're far from martyrdoms. Like, you know, it was Cardinal.
Well, that's what we just had.
Cardinal George. Yeah. Well, I mean, Cardinal George. I mean, he said, "I'll die in my hospital bed. My successor will die in prison, and his successor will die a martyr in the public square." I mean, little did he know he was going to have Cardinal Supich as his successor, but the idea rings true.
Yeah.
Earlier, Catherine, do you remember I mentioned the 1950 encyclical Humani Generis by Pope Pius XII? Yeah. The other day we were talking. That's just come right back into my mind again in this conversation, because I really would recommend you read. I don't know if you've read it, Father, but
in seminary I did.
Right. So the reason that I first got interested in this particular encyclical is because of monogenism and polygenism. Do you know those theories? Like at the time in the 1950s, there wasn't a scientific consensus on how, like, where we came from, if you like. And the church came down on monogenism because of Adam and Eve, and the scientific movement moved towards polygenism. And so it was this amazing moment when the church had chosen right, because later on science caught up and blah, blah, blah. But it goes on, the encyclical goes on, where Pius XII warns about us making allowances, if you like, because we're frightened, you know, like where theologians attempt to please modern intellectual currents by distorting Catholic teaching. For example, by blurring the line between natural and supernatural, or by reinterpreting original sin and creation. And he says this capitulation undermines confidence in the magisterium and leaves theology vulnerable to relativism. Instead of defending truth, theology becomes a kind of accommodation. And that's exactly where, I mean, it's really amazing that is a prediction of exactly where we are, isn't it? You know, it seems to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you going back to contraception and Paul VI, I mean, they call them the prophecies of Paul VI. You know, he said these things are going to happen, and sure enough, they happen. And one of my favorite books is Lord of the World, and
Hugh Roberts' favorite book, wasn't it?
Yeah, Hugh Robert Benson, I think, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was also Benedict's, and it was also John Paul II. So, right. But in there, you know, it's an incredible understanding of how the Antichrist comes to power and all this stuff. And they asked him, they said, like, you know, how did you write something that it seems so prophetic about what's going on? He's like, all I did was took the principles of the modern day and age and carried them out to their logical conclusion. Yeah. You know, so like it's not rocket science. You know, rocket science when you start dismantling the truth little by little, and you start relativizing truth little by little, eventually that's going to completely destroy the truth, and it will lead to, you know, a platform for the Antichrist or whatever, you know. I mean, whatever dictatorship is coming in, the dictatorship of relativism, a dictatorship of communism, whatever. But that's why the truth is so necessary, and that's why Jesus says, you know, I'm the way, the truth, and the life, you know, and I came to set them free. You know, and this is what I was talking to a buddy of mine the other day, again, around these whole, you know, the shootings and the murder. And, you know, Jesus says that, you know, I came that they might have life and have it abundantly. There is one that he calls a murderer and a liar, right? And what do we experience in our day and age? Murder and lying, like uncontrollable lying, uncontrollable, you know, so like violence. And so it's a clear indicator that the enemy has been given an immense amount of power. And, you know, like whenever I talk to people, they're like, well, why does God allow that? And I'm like, we can't blame God for this.
We're doing
We're doing it. Yeah. Have you seen Nefarious?
Yeah.
Okay. There's that spot in the movie. There's a spot in the movie when the demon, the possessed man, the demon's speaking, and he says, he's talking about abortion. He says, can you imagine what the carpenter feels when we rip a child from its mother's body and lay it on our altar of sacrifice? And he said, we do that, James. You and us, we've always done it together. And I'm just like, it's so chilling, like, because you can't just sit back and blame the demonic. The demonic only has the ability to carry out what it's allowed to by us and then by the will of God. But we have the ability to let the demonic do what it does. And man, have we sold out on so many levels to that in the name of fear, as you said. Fear is that you want the 7 faces of fear, or the 7 deadly sins. Like the fuel of the enemy is fear. Whenever there's fear, it's always the enemy. It's never God. Right? God is not about fear. He's about freedom.
Yeah, I kind of think that the things we see and the awful things and the things that people come running to you with saying, how can God allow this? It's good. I'm sorry, it's good that it's happening. This shows God is just. If we think we can behave the way we behave, if we think that we can put ourselves in the position of God, if we think that we can play God and use people and degrade people and harm children in the way that we're doing, and there's no consequences to that, then to me that's as good a sign as saying there is no God who loves us. So the very fact that we're seeing the effect of the choices we're making played out is a testament to there being a loving God, a just God. But the thing is, when truth is crucified, what happens? So we know that all we have to do is keep our eyes fixed on Christ. We know the answer. We know the battle is won. But we also know that we have a choice to make. Every day we have to make a choice. Are we going to go with that age that we live in, or are we going to choose Christ? And we can see the storm whipped around us. Today, who is it, Mark? It was Bernard of Clairvaux had this beautiful reading about Our Lady.
Oh, yeah.
And, in Matin, had this beautiful reading about Our Lady, and just look to Our Lady. And those who stay close to Our Lady are close to Christ. And I think that's why the churches are filling up. That's why the tradition, in the most kind of traditional and orthodox communities are thriving and growing with young people, and the baby boomers are flatlining, is because as it gets worse, so it gets better. As you hammer the nails into Christ, so the resurrection. And I think that's the times we're living in.
Yeah. And I mean that, what the blood of the martyrs is the seedbed of the church, right? Like we grow when we're attacked. And that's like, I don't know if it was you I was talking to, Mark. I can't remember what he said. Like that is the worst possible. If you wanted to like really attack, conservatives and stuff, the worst idea you can do, because most of them are Christian, is martyr somebody or kill somebody, because that is all that does is gives us more fuel to do even more. Like that's why the church has been so stagnant. Right, is because there's been no pushback. We've just been giving ground. Well, that doesn't make saints. What makes saints is when you stand your ground instead, no matter how much you're attacked, no matter how much people come after you. That's what makes for saints. And if you keep giving ground, well, then not only do you not make saints, you make people that are completely converted to the culture and complicit with the culture, and you can't make a distinction between Christian or seculars. You don't know what I mean. There's no clear lines anymore, and there are definitive clear lines, very definitive. And I think I really believe that, like, when you come after somebody, especially the Catholic Church, like I think it was C.S. Lewis. He's like, that's what's so infuriating for opponents of the Catholic Church, as they're patting down the grave, of the one that they finally silence. It's like boom, 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 boom. There's 20 different ones that have just risen up. And they put those 20 to death, and there's 1,000 that rise up, and they put the 1,000 to death. There's 10,000 that rise. Like that's how the church thrives, is when we're persecuted. I mean, it sucks, but that's the reality. It's just that's the reality, and it has been since the beginning.
Yeah,
and
it is powerful. It's like that whole thing of why did God allow one of his own, Charlie, to be killed like that? If God is real. But God enters into our suffering, doesn't he? And joins us with our suffering, and promises us a life after that suffering. And so, for Charlie, as you said, you know, at the beginning, that's probably you couldn't ask for a better way to go than to be standing up for God, you know, in a way. But obviously it's terrible for his family and for us who are watching that go on. But at the same time, you know, it's this pushback that shows the darkness that's against us. And it's only when we stand up for something, as you rightly say, that's when you really start to see how dark things are out there. If we're just going along, we hide our light under a bushel or trample our salt on the ground, you know, then it's no surprise that there's no pushback. And the church has been complicit. You know, it's so good to have you on and to meet priests. You know, we're lucky that we get to meet priests who are on fire, because I think Catherine and I both, you know, we sort of grew up in that 70s, 80s, you know, felt banners and rubbish music and Jesus is your girlfriend sort of theology. And
I had that too, man.
Yeah. And then suddenly you find out the power of the faith, and you think, what on earth of this? What, you know, why weren't we taught that? It's amazing.
Throw away your blue colouring pen and your brown colouring pen, and you start actually learning about faith and living it. Yeah, crazy time.
Absolutely. Yeah, we had one where we all wrote our sins on a rock, and then we threw it in the river.
Yeah.
You know, you're like, what the, you're like, at the time, you're just a dumb kid, and you're just like, oh, whatever. At least we get to go hang out at the river. But looking back at it, like, what the hell were we doing? Like, that makes no sense. And like, you want to talk about the cheapening of the faith? My gosh, like, you can't. There's a comedian that you can't hang your coat on that. How can you hang your soul on that? You know, like, you need. If you want, I've found, at least with young people, like they want stuff that you hold the bar. Wherever you hold the bar, they're going. I have been convinced of that since I started being a priest. Like, if you hold it way down here, they'll get that high. If you hold it way up here, they'll get that high. You know, they want to strive, but they need people to help them know what to strive for. I really believe that. And I think we're, because of all the inauthentic kind of garbage, I think we're finally seeing where the bar is. And I think a lot of people are striving to reach it.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And with my background in teaching, I can totally agree with you. You set the bar low or high, and they'll meet it. And in schools, too often, there's that low bar, and then all the kids are just like, yeah, I don't need to do this, I don't need to do that. Why? Because there's no expectation that you do. And it's such an insult to their dignity. It's like, do you really think that this human person created by God, this brilliant, wonderful, unique child, is destined for this low? Are you serious? And you're telling them that's a good thing. I couldn't agree with you more. Brilliant. Thanks, Father. But I do you know, I know you might have to go, but there's a deer behind your head. And last time we spoke to you, there was a bear, and he was really cute, and he was hanging off your wall. And I know, Father, that you are about to go on a hunting trip, and there's no way to segue to this. So I'm just going to come right out with it and just say, I really wanted to talk to you, maybe not fully today, but another time we'll chat. I'd love to talk to you about your hunting. You're on a trip next week. There are people who will say, Father, you're a priest. What are you doing going and killing God's animals? And what's that little bear doing behind you? What do you say to people who, I don't know if they say that in North Dakota, but over here, there are people who would be very critical.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, God told us to have dominion over over his creation. And I think what people don't understand is, like, the hunting that we do, at least in North Dakota and around the world, it's a lot. It's called reduction hunting, right? And so it's a certain amount of tags. Not everybody gets to go and shoot. Like, I didn't get drawn for my rifle deer this year. I have a bow tag, but all of it is very, very structured. And what it does is it maintains the size of the herds. And what people don't understand is, if you don't do that, then Mandan and Bismarck are going to have deer everywhere. And everybody's like, oh, that's so cute. No, it's not. It's not cute. They're incredibly destructive animals if they get inside city limits. They're meant to be out there. And so, part of it is just reducing the herds. Second of all, I mean, everything I shoot, I eat. And quite honestly, this is very organic. None of my deer have antibiotics. They're completely living off the land. My fish, are coming straight out of the water. They're not farm raised. And you want to talk about some real, bad stuff? Look at farm raised fish. It's you could almost make an argument that it's a little inhumane for these things, right? But and it brings camaraderie, it brings relationship. I've had conversions of people when I'm out hunting with them. I'm close to God's creation, and I will tell anybody that argues with if you I think that every person in the world, it doesn't necessarily have to be a deer, but should have to slaughter an animal. And the reason I say that is not because I'm all deranged. It's because when the first time you do that, the first time I shot a deer and I got up to it, and I do this with all of my animals, whatever I shoot, I go up, and the first thing I do is I say, God, thank you. Thank you for this creation. Thank you for providing it. And I promise to respect it and to love it and to never abuse it, But when you butcher an animal, when you shoot an animal and butcher it, you understand very clearly that there is a difference, a major difference between humanity and the rest of creation. And I think that that is very, very needed right now, because I'm sure a lot of the people that are saying, the PETA types, and we got to protect all these animals and throwing, blood on people wearing fur coats, are the same people that are rejoicing in Charlie Kirk's death. Like, they have no concept that the food that they're eating, like if you ever like from the minute you pull the trigger and shoot the deer, to get that animal to your plate is a hell of a process. Like, and I even take, once I skin it, butcher it, and then I take it to the butcher, to have sausage and stuff. But I cut my own steaks, I cut my own roasts, then to cook the roast, then to make your sausage, and then I give away usually half of my deer to poor people that are in the area. So like if God doesn't want that, like all of that is a great good, and on top of it, it says that He gave us these things for us. They're for us, And I just, I don't know. We could do an entire show on hunting. I could do one on hunting. I could do one on golfing. I got like a whole, every time I'm golfing and I talk to people about the theology of golfing. Like it is there's no sport that is closer to life and how life unfolds than golf. And there is so much theological insight that I could give you into golf. It's amazing.
I am so glad. I am so glad, Father, that I asked you about hunting, because that originally we were going to talk about that, and then Charlie Kirk's death kind of took over. And I thought I'll just tag it on at the end. But what you've just said in that 5 minutes, I think is extremely powerful. And in fact, let's not underplay this, may well be exactly part of the answer to the crazy artificiality that we're living with now. I really believe that. I really believe that. And we should get you on with a friend of ours, Sebastian Morello, who goes hunting and faces a lot of criticism for it. He's a Catholic layman, and he's written books about it and done podcasts about it. And he would agree entirely with you. But I think just that 5 minutes was golf. Yeah, maybe, I suppose. But hunting, we definitely have to set up a longer show about this.
But there's this disconnect from reality and like how people live. So we have this thing, the Falkirk mine. So the Falkirk mine is a big coal mine, and people have been trying to shut it down, and it got shut down for a bit. It's like one of the cleanest coal mines in America, right? And they have these things called drag lines, and these drag lines, like the bucket on this drag line, it's the biggest crane in the world. The bucket on it, you can fit like, I don't know, like 80 people inside the bucket. Like it's massive, or like 5 semi trailers. And when it digs a lot. Well, I went out there and I did like just a tour of the plant. And there are guys that for 12 hours a day, they run that crane. There's guys for 12 hours. It's all shift work. For 12 hours a day, they drive coal back and forth from where they're mining to the mine. There are guys that work 12-hour shifts every day that watch the turbines that are burning, right? The coal, which are producing power. And everybody sits at home on their phones on social media saying, oh, we got to go more green. And I'm like, shut up. Like, have you ever been to this place? Do you know how many people are working so you can use your stupid phone to post about this?
Yeah,
like,
cool.
Where do you think the green energy is coming from for your cars? It's coming from coal and oil that's being burned, right? Or they're mining it to get lithium for batteries, And it's not like they're mining with EV vehicles. They're mining. It's one of the dirtiest mining things in the world is lithium.
African
So
children, I
it's,
think.
yeah, man. And like the disconnect about like, even I'm going to preach on this, not this weekend, but the next weekend is like, like when we're wearing a shirt, like we don't realize, we paid $50 for the shirt, but like, what was it made for? $5? Who is it made by? Like we're just, there's so much disconnect from what is real and how people are living. And I think hunting is a major way to get back in connection with creation and the world as a whole.
Yeah, there's so much we are complicit in through our ignorance and our laziness, and we just outsource so much, from education to clothes manufacturing to food production. We've outsourced, and then the more we outsource, the less capable we are and more distant we are from nature. I really think I'm getting all excited now because I really want to talk about hunting, but we're 50 minutes in, and I know it's late here, and you're busy, Father, so we'll have to have you back. But do come back and talk with us a bit more, because I think that what you have to say is so important at this time. But thank you so much for joining us to talk about all the things that today. It's been great. Yeah. Right. People can check you out. Where? What are you doing? You're doing your own podcast.
Yeah, I have a Stand Firm Productions on YouTube, I think, and Instagram, and then frwaltz.com is just my website with my talks and stuff. And Apple Podcasts, you just type my name in. I have my homilies on there. So
brilliant. Good. Well, have a happy hunting trip next week.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I look forward to seeing what's on your wall next time we speak.
Yeah, hopefully we get some. We're going bow elk hunting with bow, so it's a tough one. It's a real tough one, but yeah, very big. Yeah.
Excellent. Right. So, thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you.
For all of you watching, thank you for watching. Thank you for sticking with us. And do please visit our website, catholicunscripted.com. And the best way to support us is by picking up a subscription there and having access to all our articles and all our videos. But for now, thanks and God bless.